Okay, everyone, welcome to the last week of class. I'm just going to do a quick overview of the final exam. If you have any extra questions, of course, email me or come to my office hours on Tuesday and Thursday and collaborate. But where you're going to find the final exam at is under the final week. So if you go there, you're going to scroll down. And the only activities other than the final exam is you do have a discussion forum to post to, and that discussion forum is actually set up as a study guide to help you prepare for any questions that might be. There's about 3 or 4 questions on budgeting for nonprofit on the final exam. So doing that discussion post and using the questions on the discussion post as a study guide will help. And the final exam itself is going to have a part A and a part B. So we'll scroll down here to see those parts. Part A will be similar to your homework assignment. Part A is worth 30% of the total final exam grade. So part A is going to be a master budget spreadsheet similar to your homework assignments. You'll have all week to complete this. It will open up 11:59 p.m. on June 19th. So Sunday at 11:59 p.m. it's going to open. It'll be open all week. You can complete this part of the exam at any time during the week. It's not timed. Just need to download the Excel worksheet, complete it, and upload it when you're finished. Just need to have it submitted by June 26th at 11:59 Mountain Time. And again, this will be an Excel spreadsheet very similar to the homework that you did. And it is part A of the final, and it is worth 30% of the total final exam grade. And final exam part B is a traditional exam format similar to the quizzes. It's worth 70% of the final exam grade. This part of the exam is timed, so you're only going to have 2 hours once you start it. There is a 3-day window for this exam, so it's going to open up at midnight on June 23rd. And then you've got 3 days that you need to take it in. Some point in those 3 days, you're going to need to sit down for 2 hours and take the exam. And it does need to be completed by 11:59 p.m. Mountain Time on June 26th. So you'll have this 3-day window to take that part of the final exam. So again, this will be open for 3 days, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. You can choose any time within those 3 days to take it, but once you do click start on this exam, it is timed. You've only got 120 minutes, which is 2 hours to take it. So make sure you've got a strong internet connection at that point, that you're not going to be interrupted as you go through the exam. And you've also got only 1 attempt on it. So there's not 2 attempts on it. It's a one-time timed exam. And there's 31 questions in it, and they're all weighted equally. So keep that in mind. Part A is like the homework assignment. You've got all week to complete it. Part B is more like the quizzes. However, it's timed. You've only got 2 hours once you start taking it. You only have 1 attempt to take it, and you do need to take it sometime in the window that it's going to be open. It'll be open Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So sometime in that window, you're going to need to sit down for 2 hours and take the final exam. So let's look at the study guide. I have it down here. So you can click here and download the study guide by clicking right there. And you'll see I've trimmed down. This is basically our learning objectives for each section, but I've trimmed down a little bit to focus on the most significant parts that are going to be covered on the exam. So from week 1, you're going to focus on some of those definitions, all the different uses and functions of budgets, the different budget systems and methods, advantages and disadvantages of budgeting, and then the bottom up, which is participative budgeting versus top-down budgeting. Week 2, we talked about all the different types of costs. I also did a lot of this in my lecture. Talked about variable, fixed, and mixed costs, so being able to distinguish the different type of costs. We also talked about costs by function or by department, so sales, manufacturing, accounting, etc. And I think one of the more important things to remember is all of your manufacturing department costs are going to be in your direct labor, your direct material, and your factory overhead budget. Your manufacturing costs are not going to be in your selling and general admin budget. So I think that's the important thing to remember. All the costs of manufacturing, the costs that go into the product and that go into cost of goods sold. So you're not going to see those costs in the selling and general admin budget. We also applied the cost volume formula. That was part of how you created a flexible budget. So remember, look at your flexible budget, review those quiz questions. The flexible budget is a budget that at the end of an actual period, you take the results in the flexible budget and put in the actual levels of volume that were achieved during that period. So remember that that's what a flexible budget is. Now, week 3 was the week that a lot of people struggled with. This is where we had all the contribution margin formulas. So if you did struggle that week, make sure to go over your quiz. If you review your quiz, you'll see that there are detailed answers for every single question, so you can see where you might have gone awry. I also posted that extra homework, or not extra practice exercises. So take a look at those, work through those, make sure you understand the section, because there definitely are some questions about the contribution margin, the contribution margin ratio, the break-even point in both dollars and units. Make sure you know the difference between a traditional income statement and a contribution margin income statement. The only thing from this week that I don't go into as much is I don't talk about the margin of safety as much. So focus on these basic formulas from this chapter. Week 4, this is the master budget. So your homework basically is going to be based on a lot of the content here, knowing how to prepare the different sub-budgets within the master budget, knowing the order they go in, knowing what goes on each budget, knowing how they fit together. Week 5, I didn't pull as much from this week. This was the week where we went in a little deeper. I think it was chapter 9, 10, and 11, where we talked about marketing, general, and manufacturing a little bit more in depth. I didn't feel like there was a lot of content to really focus on in this chapter, so I also didn't include the marketing metrics from the lecture. I do want you to understand the costs involved with marketing and the possible different metrics that could be used, but I actually don't have any metric formulas for marketing on the final. And then the one topic that was particularly relevant is when you have a multi-item raw material. So make sure you do know how to prepare that type of budget and what considerations go into preparing a raw materials budget when you have multiple items of raw materials. So those are the 2 topics that I really wanted you to focus on and retain from that week. And week 6 is the cash budget section. So make sure you're aware of the differences between certain items that would go on the income budget versus the cash budget. That sometimes can be a point of confusion. What items are actually related to cash and what items are related to the income statement. So be aware of that. If you struggled at all with the schedule of cash collections or schedule of cash payments, make sure you review your quiz answers and your homework so that you are prepared to answer questions on the final exam about either of those schedules, that you're prepared to produce a schedule as well. And then just overall, how do you prepare the cash budget? So be prepared to answer questions about that on the final, and also be prepared to do a cash budget on the final as well. That'll be part A and part B. There'll be questions on part B, and then part A, you'll actually be preparing a small cash budget. Again, your quizzes are going to be your best resource. Your quizzes and your homework are going to be your best resources to prep for the exam. So looking over your quiz questions and the correct answers will be your best resource. Week 7 is the capital budget that we just did. So understanding what a capital investment is and what all the risks are, the steps in the process, and then know how to calculate the accounting rate of return and the payback period. So I was just reviewing some of the quizzes, and I want you to remember that the accounting rate of return is measuring the investment against the income it's going to generate. The payback period is measuring the investment against the cash flows it's going to generate. So those are the 2 significant differences there. So make sure you're aware of that. Have a general understanding of the time value of money, just a general understanding of that. And then of course you will be preparing a capital budget and understand how it fits into the master budget. And then you will be preparing a budgeted balance sheet. So you want to understand basically how all these budgets fit together. And then in week 8, this was your last week, we've got I think about 4 questions from this nonprofit section. So if you've got your study guide with you, which is basically the discussion is kind of a study guide for this chapter, you shouldn't have any problem. But I'm mainly looking for you to be able to compare and contrast the differences between nonprofits and for-profit entities. List the various types of nonprofits and explain the differences, and be able to explain the unique challenges in the budgeting process for nonprofits. So there are similarities, but there also are different challenges that nonprofits do have in the budgeting process. So be aware of what those are. So that's kind of a general overview of what's going to be on the exam. Again, your quizzes, going over your quizzes are going to be your best resources because the exam questions are somewhat similar to the quizzes and focused on similar areas, and then going over your homework. So if you do have any questions, definitely send me an email, or I will have office hours this last week of class still. They're on Collaborate from noon to 1 Mountain Time. If you need to meet outside that time, you could also send me an email through Moodle or through the university email system, and I'd be happy to set up a phone call or a Collaborate to go over anything with you at all. But I think that if you really focus on your quizzes, refreshing yourself through the quizzes, looking at questions you missed in particular, really looking at that cost volume chapter and making sure you've gotten a awareness of those formulas, because there are, I think, about 3 or 4 questions on that as well, or about 3 or 4 questions on each week here. It's weighted fairly evenly across the weeks. So just focus on that, and then I think you guys will do great.